Welcome back, folks. This is number 2 in my countdown of the top 50 games in my collection. Number 2, Robinson Crusoe. Those that know me know this should not be a surprise. I've probably taught this game to 25, 30 people. Really, really love this game. So, it is a 1 to 4 player game. It is a cooperative game. It is a very difficult cooperative game, which adds to the fun because it's essentially a big puzzle that you're trying to figure out. It is an action selection game. You will have 2 tokens to choose what you're going to do during the day to try and make it off the island, at least in this scenario. What's great about this game is it's set up so that there are multiple scenarios that you can play, which adds a lot of replayability to the game. Like the standard one, the one you think of, Robinson Crusoe, is the castaway scenario. You're trying to get off a deserted island. There's also a Robinson family, which is the Swiss Family Robinson story, where you're not trying to get off the island, you realize you're stranded and you're going to try and make a life of it. And it plays a little different. And then there's the Cursed Island, where you're playing as monks trying to remove the curse from the island. And then there's actually a King Kong scenario where you're playing the film crew, and then you discover the giant ape and you're trying to capture it and bring it back before you lose too many of the crew. So for the purposes of this description, I am going to just talk about the castaway scenario and how the game works. It takes about 2 hours to play. Difficulty is 5, maybe a 4, but yeah, it's a 5. It's tough. 5 out of 5. And I'd say 12 and up could play it if there's somebody steering, steering them in the right direction. Probably 14 to actually get the 14, 15 to get the box, read the rules, and understand how to play themselves. So the way it works is there are 6 phases to each turn. In the castaway scenario, there are 12 turns that you have to build a bonfire, big pile of wood, and the fire. So essentially, you wash up on the beach. You've been shipwrecked, and then there's a stack of resources that you wash up with. You get the same number depending on if it's 1 or 4. So you get 2, and I've washed up with some biscuits and a flask of rum. Okay, so these are things I'd be able to use throughout the course of the game to help me hopefully survive. The board is laid out beautifully in that it walks you through each turn. So it's once you realize it and see how it's laid out, it's very helpful and can keep the game moving and makes it easier to understand. So phase 1 is there's an event that happens each day. So you draw the top card of the event deck, and this one says awful weather. You can't sit around camp any longer. You need someone to do something. So you would place a token on one of the stacks, and I'll get to that in a minute. And then it says, this round you cannot take the rest action or the tidy the camp action. Yeah, I said tidy the camp. You have a camp where you spend the night, and you can actually organize it, and spending some of your actions to make it nicer to live in, and that's going to help the morale of everybody there. So then this would go down here. And there's really 3 parts. There's the part I just read, there's the way to get rid of this card, and then there's the bad effect that happens if it slides off. So there's 2 spaces on the board, and if there's no room, when you flip the next one, it's going to push the card off, so the further one over, you would read whatever the bad thing is at the bottom if it should get pushed off. Excuse me. So the next thing that happens is the morale phase. So you see how happy everyone is on the island, and you can gain or lose determination. Now each player is going to have a character card, and they are double-sided. They are the exact same stats. The only difference is one's the male side, one's the female side. So I thought that was nice to try and get more ladies playing the board games. Always nice. So on here there are 4 special abilities, and then there's your health track down at the bottom. If any character should die, run out of health and die, the game is over. The other 3 wouldn't keep going. So you're all in it together, and you're all trying to help each other through this. So if you have the determination tokens available, and you gain some if your morale is high enough, then you could do some of these special abilities. So this is the carpenter, and his abilities are economical construction, which you can spend 2 determination to use determination tokens to spend 1 less wood when you're building something. Craftsmanship, you can discard 2 to re-roll a die. I'll get to the dice in a second. New idea, you can discard 3 to draw 3 new invention cards. So you start the game with a certain number of inventions that the people on the island have a rough idea how to build. This would let you do some more. Handyman, discard 3 to gain an additional token to build, and it will segue nicely into this. So you have 2 tokens that represent what you're going to do during the day. And actually I'll get to the third thing that happens before we get to this. The third thing that happens is you get resources from your camp. So wherever your camp is set up, and you can move it during the game, you'll get the resources from that island tile, and there's a whole stack of them. As you explore the island, you'll uncover more and more. This one has a food and a wood. So we would get a wood and a food and put them there. So then the fourth phase is, what are you going to build? What are you going to do for the day? So you could build something. You could try and build your shelter. If you don't have a shelter and you spend the night out under the elements, you take a wound. If you don't have food at the end of the day, you take 2 wounds. The carpenter takes 12 before they die. I think most of the characters are in that range, 12. Some may have 10. So you could build the shelter. You could improve the roof on the shelter, because that's important to fight off the weather. You can build a palisade around your, essentially a wall around your shelter to keep the animals out. You could build some sharp pointy sticks, weapons, or you can try and build one of the things that you know if you have the resources unlocked. So right now the only thing that I could do turn 1 is to build the shovel. To build the rest of these, I need to uncover, like the knife and the fire, I need to find a mountain hex on the island. To build the map or the dam, I would need the river. To build the rope or the cure, some medicine, I would need the plains, and then I'd need to build bricks or the pot, I would need hills to get from that terrain type. So I would say, okay, I'm going to try and build the shovel, and I'm going to explore part of the island. So then the next phase, the 5th phase, is actually going through all the actions that people have selected. And then at the bottom of the board, it has, it'll walk you right through, left to right, all of the actions in the order that they happen in. So the first thing is, did anyone try and clear up the event cards? Nope. Did anybody go hunting? Well, eventually we're going to discover, as we explore the island, we're going to discover animal tracks, which will add animal cards to the hunting stack. So you could go hunting and find an animal, hunt an animal, and get some food and get the animal pelt, which will help you get off the island. But in here, there's everything from finches to tigers and alligators and dodo birds and tortoises. So yeah, it's a risk going hunting. But sometimes you need to. So being a solo player, I would also have Friday and the dog. So I'm going to send the dog with me, and I'm going to have Friday clean up the event deck. So then I would build something. So we go to the build phase, and because I only have one token on it, it doesn't automatically succeed. You put 2 tokens, automatically succeeds. 1, you have to roll the dice. So there are, I should have these out. There are different dice for building, gathering, and exploring, and there's different percentages, but the 3 dice do the same thing. There's one that determines if you succeed or not, and if you it's either a succeed. If you fail, you get 2 determination tokens, which will help you in future turns for your special abilities. So we'll say I succeeded building the shovel, because that's first, and then the next die is, do you hurt yourself doing it, because you could take a wound while you're doing it. And the last one is the adventure die. Do you have an adventure while you are doing it? So I'd say I rolled the question mark, and then each of these has 2 parts, the top part and the bottom part. You don't read the bottom part, because you'll find out in a second. Top part says howling in the bushes, and this is where the story comes in. While working, you hear some scary howling coming from the bushes. After a while, the predator goes away. Shuffle into the event deck. So this card would go into the stack of event cards. You'd shuffle them up. And then the next day, you go through, and if it happens, one of these cards happens to be on top, you would read it, and that's when you read the bottom half. And then it says, the beast is here. The predator comes into your camp and attacks you. Fight the beast, which is just the same as hunting. So you need a certain weapon level to take care of it. You're going to lose some of the weapon level. They damage the weapon as you're fighting the beast. And then it's going to give you food and maybe food, maybe a pelt. This one does. And then this one takes down your palace part of your wall as well. And then you draw another card. So you always are going to get one of the actual event cards. So later in the game, you may have had a lot of these adventure come up. So you could have 5 or 6 of these cards in your event deck, and they could all come up back to back to back and really hurt the party. So the next option was gather. So each of these map tiles has resources on it, maybe food, maybe wood, maybe both. You always get at the start of your turn the resources from your camp, but if you want to gather more, you have to send tokens out to gather. So that's how you're going to get enough wood for this scenario. The final one is explore, and if you successfully explore, then there's a stack of map tiles, and this makes the island look different each game. And then you would draw, and this says, okay, I found a hilly region of the island, so I would set that. And sorry if you can hear the dogs walking around in the background. So it also says, okay, so I found animal sign, so I would take one of the animal cards, not looking at it, and put it there. So that means next turn I could go hunting. I would get 2 exploration tokens. So there's this stack of exploration tokens, which would be sitting by the board, and I would get 2 of them. So I could find some wood and bring it back to camp, or I could find this tile that has a whole bunch of symbols on it, which is In short, it's a goat. I discovered a goat, and it's the symbol means if I have a weapon, then I can kill the goat for a food and a pelt. But I can also just keep the goat, and that's he'll stay at the camp. I don't have to feed him, but it's kind of a reserve that if I really need a food, then I can get rid of the goat, so long as I have at least one weapon level. Then there are some that are scenario specific. So they have 4 of these tiles, and see, I just say I pulled this one, and it's different on each of these scenarios. And it says I find some herbs. I can heal some herbs. Getting late. Find some herbs. I could heal one of my wounds. So that's that. The other actions that are options could tidy the camp, but because of the awful weather, I wouldn't be able to do that this turn. Or rest, which would let me heal one. Later in the, according to this scenario, then we start rolling the weather dice. And the weather dice are the most evil dice in gaming. They do a lot of, for each rain cloud that comes up, sorry, should have had it out. For every roof level you don't have, it's going to cost you a food because you want to eat more. And there's also snow, and there's also a winter die that gets added in, and snow costs you wood, which slows you down from being able to finish the bonfire. So yeah, it seems like a lot. It is a lot going on, but it's very thematic. It's very stressful in a good way, because you're really trying to work together and figure out, hey, how are we going to do this? Why don't you try this, and I'll do this, and you focus on building, and I'll go exploring, and I'll go hunting, and it's really each game feels different, especially with the different scenarios. But even in this first one that I probably played a dozen times, each game has really felt different. Sometimes we've died by turn 4, sometimes we made it off the island. I remember the one time that I took my final wound on turn 9, just about to light the fire. I just needed to create the fire, and I rolled the creation, and I took the wound, which killed my character. And so close, but so far. Yeah, I think that's it. There's a whole stack of treasure trap animal cards that come in with the other scenarios. The components are great in this game. There's one expansion out that is Darwin exploring the Galapagos and bringing the creatures back. There's another expansion that's coming out that's the Lost City of Z, which is, I'm forgetting the explorer's name. I say Livingston, but that doesn't sound right. Just going down into South America. But yeah, love this game. Give it a chance if you can. That's number 2, Robinson Crusoe. One to go. Stay tuned. Thanks for watching. For the kids.